Hello everyone, welcome back to the Analyst for 12th September 2024, where we will be understanding 9 most important articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express. In the very first article, we'll be talking about how fundamental duties can be made more effective in the country. In the second article, we will be talking about an editorial on the aspirations of the Startup India mission in the country. In the third article, we will be talking about the recent initiatives regarding electric vehicles in the country, that is known by the PME Drive initiative. In the fourth article, we will be talking about the recent updates made to the Ayushman Bharat initiative in the country. And in the next article, we will be talking about organ on chip technology, which is a novel initiative in the biotechnological field. And finally, we will be concluding the discussion with Prelims Snippets, where we will be discussing news in shorts, which will be relevant for the prelims examination. So stay tuned. So students, welcome to the first article, where we will be discussing on the fundamental duties in the country. And this is the article where the main agenda of this article is that there is a plea or a petition which has been submitted at the Supreme Court. The petitioner is arguing that we must be trying to enforcing the fundamental duties in the country by a legal provision or by, say, any other provision in the country. We know that the fundamental duties in the country are not enforceable by any law, right? So this is what the petitioner is asking the Supreme Court, that the Supreme Court should be enhancing the various provisions of the fundamental duties as a part of the law in the country. And according to that, the Attorney General of our country has told the Supreme Court that effectuating the fundamental duties in the country or bringing into effect the various provisions of fundamental duty in the country is an ongoing task by the government of the day, despite fundamental duties not being a part of any legislative proposal or any legislative agenda of the country. Now here we have to discuss this article with reference to our prelims, where we have to understand the various concepts where Indian polity is concerned, governance of the country is concerned, and also in GS2 we have to talk about the Indian Constitution, its basic structure, the various features, the historical underpinnings of the same in this proper format. So let us start with the very basics first. We have to start with the fundamental duties in its entirety. See, initially when the Constitution was actually enacted, the fundamental duties were not a part of the same. We had the fundamental rights, we had the directive principles of state policy, which actually are the duties of the state rather, not the duties of the citizens, right? So initially we had the fundamental rights, which are extremely important for the overall empowerment, development and opportunity of the individual in the nation. And also we had the DPSP, which showed the clear guidelines on which a state or say India has to be governed, and the various government policies has to be evolved over a period of time for the benefit and the welfare of the citizens and the individuals in the country. So this is what we had in the beginning. And government in 1976 set up the Sardar Swaran Singh Committee, who actually for the very first time recommended in India that there must be a clear distinction between citizens' rights, which are guaranteed under the Constitution, under constitutional rights, under fundamental rights, under various other legal rights apart from the Constitution. While the citizens had many rights, but they also have to abide by some duties toward the country, towards their brotherhood, towards their various moral and duty obligations. So this is what the citizens' right are already there in the country as a part of our constitutional structure, legal structure in general. On the other hand, the state also expects, the overall people of India, they also expect that each and every one of us will be behaving morally. So this is where our duty is coming into picture. So that is what this committee recommended, that there should be a separate chapter on fundamental duties, after which the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act was enacted. Here, Part 4A was introduced, right, where Article 51A was also introduced here, where here the various fundamental duties were enacted as 10 in number. Later the 11th fundamental duty was added in 2002 in say Article 51K, where it is pertaining to the educational aspect. We will be looking into this, right? And here In this 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, these fundamental duties were made non-justiciable, right? That is, in infringement of any fundamental duties, any other citizens cannot go to the court and allege that that person is not following their own fundamental duties. Fundamental duties are overall a moral and basic structure on which the Indians or us should behave with each and every citizens of the country, and also with the broader idea of being an Indian. Right? So this is what we have to understand with reference to fundamental duties, and fundamental duties are applicable only to the citizens, correct? And if you look at the entire list of fundamental duties, which is extremely important for your mains, because you definitely have to quote these duties in GS2 papers, where we have to talk about the Indian polity, in GS4 especially in ethics case studies, in various ethical questions, you also can quote fundamental duties, right? So we have the fundamental duty to abide by the constitution, national flag and anthem. We have the fundamental duty to cherish the ideals of the freedom struggle, uphold the sovereignty, unity and integrity of the country, defend the country and render national service, promote harmony and brotherhood, preserve the rich heritage of the composite Indian culture, protect natural environment, have scientific temper, humanism, and also safeguard public property, abjure violence, strive towards excellence, and also provide opportunities to education. Now, this particular 2022 amendment was brought in to actually effectuate the right to education aspect. Now, can you mention in the comments in India what are the provisions relevant to right to education, because we actually discussed this in the recent analyst sessions. And here in 2022 this portion was added where this became the 11th fundamental duty, where who is a parent or guardian to provide opportunities for education to his child, as the case may be, as a ward between age of 6 and 14 years. Now here, the main importance of this fundamental duties, firstly, is to preserve our own Indian traditional values, right? What is the values that we have cherished for centuries, for millennia, to preserve our integrity as a country. So firstly, we have to celebrate that, and that is what we should be also respecting, the values of each and every community, each and every aspect of our country. Next, these particular duties remind the citizens constantly of their responsibilities of to uphold the dignity of the country, to strive for excellence in each and every sphere of the country, and so on. Next, it is also upholding the moral duties and the civic duties of the country, right? Now, whatever we understand is actually the moral duty, right? We have to respect the overall security architecture of the country. We have to uphold the traditional values of the country. So these are all having the aspects of moral values as a citizen. Also, when we talk about the civic duties of our citizen, it is about respecting a national flag, national anthem, and the various unities and the various symbols that stand for India as a country. Then it is also acting as a warning against any anti-national activities, such as tampering with any national flag and so on. Next, it is also trying to inspire discipline and commitment among the people of the nation. Next, it is also trying to play a very, very important role while the Supreme Court is adjudicating on any matter. And the fundamental duties help the Supreme Court into deciding what the finalities of the case would be. Right? For example, if the Supreme Court is deciding upon a case which is going against the environmental values, then the Supreme Court can get reminded that the citizens have the fundamental duty to protect the environment, as we will be seeing in the next Supreme Court cases. So Supreme Court can time to time can be referring to these fundamental duties and can play an important role in judicial review. And also, we have to understand that fundamental rights and duties are complementary in nature. Right? We cannot tell that we have to enjoy all the rights and have no duties. So this is what we have to understand, that while we are enjoying those important rights given to us of liberty, of privacy and so on, which are actually part of the fundamental rights, but on the other hand, we have to also respect other privacy, others right to opportunity and so on. So this is what we have to understand, the fundamental rights and duties are totally concurrent with each other. And this is where we have to understand that the significance of fundamental duties go far beyond any kind of fundamental rights, duties and so on. And here, the most important Supreme Court cases with reference to fundamental duties, right? The very first is Balaji Raghavan versus Union of India 1995, which upheld the constitutional validity of the national award, citing that the citizens of the country needs to strive for excellence in public life. That means that as a part of our fundamental duty, we have that fundamental duty of say excelling in spheres of science, tech, humanism and so on. So that is why we must be trying to give national awards to various citizens of the country who have done significant achievements for the country. Next, in the MC Mehta case of 2000, the Supreme Court highlighted that it is the duty of the country, it is the duty of the citizens rather, to protect the environment. So that is what it is also trying to, in the Supreme Court cases, in the Supreme Court is time and again referring to the duties of the individuals. Next, in the Sri Ranganath Mishra versus Union of India 2003 case, Supreme Court told that it is the duty of the government to disseminate information on the fundamental duties in the nation. Also, in the NCERT books, at the very beginning of the NCERT books, don't we have the various fundamental duties, the preamble of the nation and so on. So this is actually due to this particular case and also the various evolution of this case over a period of time, that the fundamental duties must be there on the NCERT books or on the various public platforms, on the various aspects of say government websites, ministries and so on, where the people must be aware of their own duties, not only about their rights. Right? In the Home Secretary case in 2012, the Supreme Court told that it is the duty of the citizens, to obey lawful orders and safeguard the public property. Right? So this is what we see from the Supreme Court cases, from not only these cases, from very other cases also. Time and again Supreme Court is telling that it is the fundamental duty of the citizens to uphold the environment, to uphold the various kinds of laws in the country, to get aware of the various information with reference to fundamental duties in this particular matter. And also, if we can look at this news article, right, we see that these highlighted portions in yellow, these are the portions where you can actually extract some of the important key points which you can use in your mains answers. Now we know that fundamental duties are not enforceable by law, but this is what this particular petitioner is talking about in the court, that we must be having some mechanism of enforcing the same, right? And in this particular matter, the top court, that is the Supreme Court, also sought direction to the center for enacting well-defined laws and rules to ensure adherence to the fundamental duties as enshrined in the Constitution. Supreme Court also told the center that if you can, please explore the avenues in which you can enact the fundamental duties, right? And also the Supreme Court further remarked that the judiciary has been consistently proactive and being taken steps to enact or effect the fundamental duties via these various Supreme Court cases, as we have seen right now, right? And also the Supreme Court further says that such duties provide a valuable guide and interpretation of the constitutional and the legal challenges and the legal issues which must be abiding as a social issue or a social obligation on all of the citizens of the country. And that is what the Attorney General in the Supreme Court is now replying to the Supreme Court, is that effectuation of fundamental duties in India will and always be a work in progress, because it is not a law as of now, but it does not mean that it has to be a law to be enforced in the country, because according to Justice Verma Committee on Fundamental Duties, right, the committee acknowledged that in India we do not have a proper operation for enacting the fundamental duties in the country, right? There is a non-operationalization of fundamental duties in the nation, and that is what, following various laws in the country, we understand various fundamental duties can actually be upheld. For example, the Prevention of Insults to National Honor Act is actually preventing the insult to any national flag, anthem, or the constitution of the country. We have the Protection of Civil Rights Act, where various aspects of untouchability discrimination is ensured, that it does not take in the public place, and if it is taking, it is actually subjected to fines, imprisonment and so on. Next, we have the Representation of the People's Act, where it is a duty of the people to get aware of the various legislatures, and also we have the various provisions in this particular act that can penalize the various offenders with reference to any corruption case, with any election malpractice, right? Also we have the fundamental duty of protecting the environment where the provisions for any violations of any harm to any wild animals, to any say biodiversity in the country is protected under the Wildlife Protection Act. It is also say a provision under the Forest Conservation Act with reference to the deforestation aspect without any government authorization. So Justice Verma committee is telling that we do not have any law for this particular matter. But despite that, we have various provisions which is trying to have some adherence to the fundamental duties of the country. But after that also, there are many calls by the communities, by the legal community, by the various constitutional experts to enact a particular law, to enact a particular provision to bring in the fundamental duties under the ambit of law. But that would be opening a Pandora's box where there would be many issues rather than solutions in this matter. Because what kind of duties should be enforced, what kind of penalties would be there, that would be a concern then. Now, with reference to this, we have a PYQ from 2017 in prelims where it is talking about, say, which of the statements are true regarding fundamental duties of an Indian citizen. Now, I want this answer in the comments below and you let me know the explanation of this answer too, which we have talked about right now. And for you all who are appearing mains this year and also who are practicing for mains next year, there's a practice question for you all, that the non-enforceability of fundamental duties does not diminish their importance. Throw more light on the statement. Now please do let me know some of your own arguments, 2-3 arguments in the comment section below. In the next article, we'll be talking about this editorial, which is a very beautiful and a very useful editorial on the startup scenario and the potential of startups for the overall Indian economy in the particular aspect here. Now, this article is exploring the possibilities for making India a startup nation. And this is a very important article for your UPSC prelims where you have to talk about economic and social development, and also for our GS3 provisions where we have Indian economy and the various issues and challenges regarding the various sectors, regarding the various government initiatives and the performance of this initiative. Now, to start with, the authors are highlighting 3 major economic events that led to strong Indian economic growth as of now in 2024. That was UPI, the introduction of UPI that revolutionized the digital payments in the country. Nowadays, it is extremely difficult to find an individual who does not know about UPI and who does not use UPI, right? Particularly with reference to receiving payments, making payments, UPI has made our life extremely simple and extremely easy. Next, the 2016-17 revolution that came in the telecom industry with the advent of Jio and the restructuring of Airtel and Vodafone Idea and also BSNL, who are right now revolutionizing the telecom industry in the nation. Now, when we talk about the telecom sector, we have had various technologies, for example, from 4G to 5G, right? And also, when we talk about the revolution that was a part of the same, that is actually the revolution that came in the very cheap amount of data cost, or say the cost of data in the nation, high amount of internet penetration via smartphones in the country. Also, during the pandemic, while the entire country shut down, the entire country went to the internet and started ordering, say, various items on the e-commerce platform, as also seen from this particular figure, right? From this particular data, as we can understand, from 2019 to 2023, right, the e-commerce sector in the country has increased over a period of time. And all of this, if you can see, they are highly interlinked. The UPI scenario made it more easier for the country to transact digitally. Now, the telecom revolution made it very easy for the country to go and make transactions digitally, that is via UPI, and also on e-commerce platforms, right? And also the e-commerce platforms created more and more employment, more and more opportunities for the nation. So this is what we have to understand, that the digital revolution, the e-commerce revolution, the telecom revolution, they transformed India's growth story. And also India's growing economic influence can be also highlighted from this data that is given in this editorial. For example, in 2024, India's estimated nominal GDP is $3.9 trillion. And the first trillion mark, or say the first trillion in this 3.9 trillion, was achieved by India in 60 years. Right? The second trillion was achieved in 7 years. The third trillion was achieved in just 5 years. That was as of 2019. So we can understand only in 5 years we achieved the third trillion, that is in this $3.9 trillion. In 2022, India surpassed the United Kingdom to become the fifth largest economy. And also according to IMF and according to various other multilateral organizations and also various other financial institutions abroad, India remains a bright spot in the global economy, where we understand the average GDP growth is actually very high at around say 7 to 8%, right, as of say 2022 to 2024 financial years. And also when we look at the inflation, average inflation, this is also below 6% when we compare the same with countries such as say Russia, Brazil, US, UK and various other nations, where we see that their growth rate is actually very less. The GDP growth rate is actually very less. That is why India emerged as a bright spot in the global economy according to various say multilateral organizations. And this is very true. Why? Because of the various transformative changes that has been taking place in India. And one of the transformative changes we'll be discussing here is the effect of Indian startup ecosystem on the country. Firstly, we'll be looking at some data here. Now, India is the third largest home to the startup ecosystem in the entire world. When we talk about the various startup ecosystem, we talk about various laws, various aspects of government initiatives, right, and the mindset of the individuals who are trying to invest in the nations. Apart from this, there are also aspects of funding, how the startups are getting funding in the country and so on. So we understand India is home to the third largest startup ecosystem in the entire world. Next, the startups contributed nearly 4% of India's GDP in 2023, and this created around 15.5 lakh direct jobs in 2017. And this data is extremely important for your mains value addition points, and all of this data, most of this data are actually sourced from this editorial itself. And apart from this, India also added one unicorn in every 20 days. As of now, India is having 111 unicorn startups. Unicorn startups are those startups which are valued at or more than $1 billion, right? And also in this particular aspect, in this India's thriving startup ecosystem, India's higher education institutions, particularly the top tier institutions such as IITs, IIMs are performing well. As we can see from this particular data, IIT Bombay, IIT Delhi, Kharagpur, Madras, Kanpur, University of Mumbai, Delhi University are those institutions, higher institutions in the country, which are actually registering higher number of startup founders in the nation. They are trying to raise capital from the market, from the various private sector, from the government sector. And also, if as we can see here, at the global ranking also, IIT Bombay is at the 17th rank when we talk about, say, the various institutions that produce entrepreneurs with strong funding in the entire world. So this is what we have to understand, that these are some of the important data that you should be definitely writing down in your notes. Now, what are the key drivers for this particular aspect here? Now, if you can understand the entire startup ecosystem in the country, most of the startup investments are focused in the fintech center, right? Fintech center or the financial technological center, which are dealing with, say, financial applications such as Paytm, Google Pay and so on. Alongside the same also, we have the e-commerce sector, we have the consumer services, we have transportation sector, we have the enterprise sector. So these are the various sectors on which the startups are, say, encouraged or say interested in the country. What are the key drivers? Firstly, the changing aspirations and the mindset of the country. People in India are right now willing to take more and more risks by investing their savings and starting a particular innovative business. Also, India is home to world's lowest data cost, that is, internet is very affordable to us, and we can have the access to various apps and services of various startups. So startups also know that Indians are having exposure to the internet, so that is why most of the startups are exploiting the digital space. Next, the digital expansion in various sectors such as agricultural sector, such as finance sector, such as industrial sector, right? This is trying to boost or say encourage the startups or say the entrepreneurs to invest, say, funds and trying to innovate or say try to make the people's lives easier. For example, in agriculture, we have many startup apps which are talking about using AI and detecting various pests, right? So these are the various potential that India is having. And why this is the case? Because the government of India way back in 2010, 13, 14 and so on, they started bringing in the digital revolution in the nation. Next, India's demographic advantage is also very huge because most of the country is young right now, and India is expected to remain one of the youngest country in the world till 2070. So you can imagine the potential for market demand for the startup founders or say the entrepreneurs in the nation. They can devise so many products for this young population, and this demand will be lasting till 2070. So definitely this startup potential is very high in the nation. Apart from this, there are also huge number of government initiatives for the startups, as we can see here. Right, in 2016, the Startup India mission was launched, which is an overall ecosystem of promoting startups in the nation, particularly via three major headers. Firstly, handholdings by helping the startups generate huge amount of innovation profit from day one by the government, by the private sector. Then also, Startup India is having that wing of funding and incentives where the startups can get funds from the government or from the private sector. And finally, it is also about incubating or giving mentorship to the startups. Now, here, firstly, about the legal support that the government is giving is about, say, simplifying various environmental and labor laws in the country. Indian government is also trying to simplify the intellectual property rights applications here, and also trying to simplify the exit process for the startups, where startups can exit as early as 90 days if the particular business is not working out. And this makes sense. Why? Because it must be as easy to set up a business in the country, and also that much easier it must be for the company, because the funds must not be stuck with the particular investors in a non-profitable business. Next, there is a fund of funds by SEDBI to give more and more encouraging support via funding. Next, there is a credit guarantee where any loans raised by the startups from the banks, they must be backed by, say, the government of India's guarantee, not by the startups own guarantee in this particular matter, to reduce the cost of the startups. Then the startups in India, they are also getting tax exemptions for around 3 years. Apart from this, there are various, say, industry academy handholding aspects where the industry collaboration, academic collaborations would be there. Then there would be various competition grants and various events to spread the awareness about this particular aspect here. Apart from this, India is also having a Startup India Hub, which is a platform for all the stakeholders of startups, be it the government stakeholder, private and so on. Next, there is a Startup India Seed Fund scheme, which is trying to give more and more funding to the startups over a period of time. Next, we also discussed this credit guarantee scheme for startups. And finally, this state startup ranking, where the states in India are ranked with reference to their best performing aspects of startups. In India, we have the best performing states of Gujarat, Karnataka, and also in category B states, which is the state which less than 10 million population. Here we understand the best performer state is, Himachal Pradesh, right? And also we understand from these rankings, it makes it very easier for the various state governments to compete with each other in a very healthy format. So more and more startups come up from their own states and hence generate more and more revenue for the people, and also create more and more jobs and employment in the country. Now, the main aspect of this editorial is how to integrate the 3 E's, and these 3 E's will be extremely important in your mains answers too. Please do use these important points in your answers. These 3 E's are education, entrepreneurship and employment. How this can be, say, effectively garnered by startups. So we'll be looking at some 3 or 4 points here. How we'll be understanding the startups can be, say, backward and have forward linkages with education, entrepreneurship and, say, employment. Now, if we understand, if we encourage, or say if the government of India tries to encourage the students to pursue entrepreneurship, this has numerous benefits, as is evidenced by this data. There was a global survey in 2021 where 16% of the students planned to start businesses in their, say, school life, college life, or say higher education, right? And you have to understand, in India, there are less than 2% of graduates from Indian institutions, such as IITs even, who actually chose to pursue entrepreneurship. Why? Because they thought of going for more and more safe options, such as job placements and so on. Because we have to understand, entrepreneurship and creating a startup can be extremely risky, subjected to various market conditions, funding constraints and so on. So that is why in India we see that this mentality is not yet changing to that particular manner, as we can see from the case of US or UK, where this percentage is as high as 10%, right? Also, if 5% of the Indian graduates pursue entrepreneurship in their colleges or after their education, around 5 lakh new jobs can be created annually, even with about 90% of the startups may not be able to generate any profits. Even with that particular data, right, we can have 5 lakh new employment in the country. And when we talk about the employment in the country and the job creation potential, even if the 10% of the new startups survive, 5.5 lakh direct jobs can be created and 55 lakh indirect jobs can be created every year. And we can also understand this will be adding 1% to the labor force annually. And this will be complementing Government of India's efforts to reduce the unemployment rate, right, over a period of time. Apart from this, Indian government spends lots on subsidies by giving a lot of skilling opportunities to the people and also giving a lot of funding aspirations to the country to reduce unemployment. And if we can channelize those kind of funds to the startups in the country, we can actually create this direct and indirect jobs of this volume in the nation. Next, we have to understand in our colleges, in our higher education institutions, we have more focus on, say, getting placements and not starting up new companies. So this also mindset needs to be changed in the universities, in the educational institutions, where there should be more and more student-led ventures as a part of the curriculum itself. Then and there only the students can be having this aspiration of improving their entrepreneurship skills over a period of time. And finally, there must be an industry academy linkage, where in the US we find that around 3.4% of their GDP they spend on research and development. In India, that is only 0.7% of the entire GDP, and this is very bad for the economy. Why? Because we understand that more and more research and development will be leading to better amount of technology, and better amount of technology can be shared with the startups, and they can be becoming more and more profitable, create more jobs and increase the GDP of the country. So this is why more and more research and development can have a direct linkage, indirect linkage with the GDP. So this is what we must be increasing as a nation, our funding with reference to the research and development in the nation. Now here we have a mains question. Here the question is that India can nurture and promote entrepreneurship through higher education, government policies and industry linkage. Comment. Now please do let me 2-3 of your points in the comment section below. And here there is this beautiful chart here where you can get all of the important data. You can pause the screen, you can just have a glance at all of the important data on starters, where you can use this in your introduction or say as a part of your body, or even your conclusion in your answers. So please do have a look at this kind of value additions. In the next article, we'll be talking about PM E-Drive initiative, where the Union Cabinet has approved a new scheme called PM Electric Drive Revolution in Innovative Vehicle Enhancement. And here this is a very important article for UPSC Prelims, where we have to talk about environment, ecology, biodiversity, climate change, and on GS3, where we have the topics of infrastructure, conservation, environmental pollution and degradation topics. Now, when we talk about electric vehicles, we have talked about this extensively in the previous sessions also. Here I will be giving you a brief summary in this slide, and we'll be moving on to the initiative later. Now, in India, when we talk about the potential of electric vehicles in the country, that is very huge. That is actually seen from the increasing adoption of EVs in the nation. As we can understand, EV sales have surged over 45% in 2024. Also, the total registration of the EV in the nation has reached 1.5 million units as of the last year. Next, India's overall EV market penetration is at 6.3%. This means how many people are actually buying or keeping the EV cars or electric vehicles or motorbikes in their homes, or they are using as a part of their businesses. That is 6.3%. That is actually quite high, right? And also, as you can see, that over a period of time, after COVID pandemic, the sales of EV that is of two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, buses, they have also increased over a period of time, right? Because there are various benefits associated with the electric vehicles. Firstly, we understand it reduces noise and air pollution. Air pollution, why? Because it runs on, say, maybe partly electricity or fully electric vehicles, right? Where it is running fully on electric, say, sources, and that is reducing our consumption of fossil fuels. It is also not having a proper traditional combustion engine, which creates a lot of noise, and also this reduces the noise in the, say, urban areas, that leads to quieter cities. It also leads to improving of operational efficiency of the vehicles, where in the traditional combustion engine only 17% of the fuel is effectively utilized by the vehicles, right? But here in EVs 60% of the, say, electricity is used, and this gives a proper productivity for the person who is owning the EV. And also this is in line, or say adoption of EVs are in line with India's climate change aspirations, which is also known as Panch Amrit, where India is trying to, say, diversify India's own aspects of fossil fuels, renewable energy, and becoming a carbon neutral country and achieve net zero by 2070. So this is what we have to understand, that adoption of electric vehicles, which will be reducing the carbon intensity of the country also by reducing the amount of carbon dioxide emitted via vehicular pollution. As also you can see, if you look at the sector wise greenhouse gas emissions in India as of 2019 levels, we understand that after agriculture and industry, transportation sector is actually highly polluting, apart from, say, agriculture, electricity, and say industry applications, where we understand more of the greenhouse gas emissions is actually attributed to the transportation sector, and EVs can be helping the same with reference to our aspirations in achieving the India's climate change goals. And here, when we talk about this initiative, when we talk about this scheme is talking about giving subsidies and demand incentives to the consumers and to the producers of the EVs, right? What kind of subsidies? It is via, say, e-vouchers for various EV buyers, where any buyer who will be purchasing any electric vehicles, they would be having their Aadhaar linked with that particular say transaction, and after the transaction the government of India, or say any other government authority, they will be giving an e-voucher, a discount voucher to the, say, particular EV buyers, and they can avail these buyers from the sellers. And how the sellers can be compensated? They will be compensated by registering on the PM E-Drive portal, where the sellers can claim that discount that seller had given to the EV buyer. Next, the government is also trying to push for converting the ambulance fleet of the country to e-ambulance, and it is trying to procure huge amount of e-ambulance in this particular matter. Then also the government is trying to procure e-buses for public transport, where majority of the buses will be procured by the state transport departments, and also the cities where there will be say intercity and interstate e-buses between the various cities, they would be also prompted to take up electric vehicles. And also vehicle scrapping policy priority will be given, particularly in various cities where this particular scrapping policy of old vehicles and giving discounts on the new EV vehicles would also be ensured. Next, there are also lots of incentives for e-trucks to decarbonize the trucking system in the nation. Next, charging infrastructure is also stipulated to be set up at a very fast pace, where most of the efforts, most of the funds under this particular initiative, they would be allocated at various cities and the highways where we see more of the electric vehicle density in. And also we have to understand in this particular initiative, this is also talking about modernization of various testing facilities for the electric vehicles in the country. So this is a very, very important initiative which is trying to look at modernizing the electric vehicle scenario in the nation. Now, apart from this, there are various other measures which have been taken by the government of India. Firstly, there was this FAME 2 initiative of 2019, which has been now replaced with this PM E-Drive. Now, FAME 2 scheme tried to promote more and more EVs and hybrid vehicles that run both on electricity and fossil fuels. Now, we can understand PM E-Drive is a much more comprehensive kind of initiative which is now replacing the FAME 2 scheme. Next, the government has also reduced the GST rate from 18% to 5% on electric vehicles. Apart from this, there is also this e-Amrit portal, which is an unified portal of e-vehicle owners, manufacturers and various types of, say, government authorities who can actually bring in various regulations and policies for easy adoption of electric vehicles in the nation. In 2024, a new EV policy was also launched, as you can see here, where around 4,150 crores is actually envisaged as a minimum investment for setting up manufacturing sector in the electric vehicle sector, where there will be a 3-year timeline for setting up manufacturing facilities for any new company, and say 50% of the value chain, or say manufacturing of the electric vehicles must be done in India by the 5th year of setting up of the electric vehicle manufacturing unit in the nation. Also, apart from this, any raw materials, for example, say batteries, any lithium aspects and so on, whichever has to be, say, imported from other nations, on that custom duties will be kept unchanged at 15%. It won't be changed because it has to be certain for the manufacturers for 5 years. Next, maximum of 8,000 EVs can be imported in a particular year. And also, there is a Niti Aayog's draft battery swapping policy which is trying to totally rehaul the battery swapping policy, which is actually, say, the change of batteries with reference to the older EV vehicles in the nation. And also, India is trying to enact a campaign of EV 30 by 2030, that is achieving 30% of, say, the vehicles in the nation must be electric vehicles by 2030. Apart from this, we need further measures in this particular sector. Firstly, we must be having a model of battery leasing. That is, maybe the electric vehicles, as we can see here, they come with batteries and so on, right? We can sell electric vehicles without the batteries. Now, what the owners of the electric vehicles they can do, they can lease the batteries from any other private sector. So that will be saving 40% of the cost of the EVs, because around 40% of the cost is due to the battery of the EV. Next, according to the National Mission for Transformative Mobility and Battery Storage 2019 rules, right, we must be trying to totally restructure this and particularly try to have a good and comprehensive aspect of battery charging technology, battery scrapping policy and battery manufacturing sector in the nation, right? Apart from this, India also needs 1.3 million plus chargers by 2030 according to CII report. And here, India can adopt a charge as you park at various, say, substations, highways, petrol stations and so on. Next, this particular, say, charge as you park can be envisaged as a PPP model, where the private and the public sector both can contribute funds in this particular matter. Also, in rural areas, small scale EV charging stations must be set up for the better adoption of EVs in the rural areas, right? Where we can understand the charging stations require a lot of investment in this particular matter, right? Also, if we understand that the cost of charging the electric vehicles is also very high, or say the toll, or say the burden it have on the overall national electric grid, that is also high, but at around, say, 16,000 crore units, right, which is actually having impact on the overall power sector of the nation. So there is also a need to have better amount of power infrastructure in the country, mostly fueled by solar and wind, or say any other renewable energy in the nation. Next, there must be highway battery swap corridors, where along the national highways, along the most used highways in the countries, we must be having battery swap corridors where the owners of the EV can swap their batteries for the fully recharged batteries. Next, hybrid vehicle subsidies must also be given, because hybrid vehicles are not fully electric, but also we can understand they are electric to some extent, and they will be reducing the carbon dioxide emissions. So the same benefits that is given to the fully electric vehicles, they can also be given to the hybrid vehicles. And also, whatever the batteries are used in the EVs, right, they can be recycled and repurposed and be sold off to various e-rishkas and various other aspects of the Indian economy who require this kind of batteries. So we must be having a second life bazaar for this particular batteries. Now here I have a mains question, that is a practice question for you all, about what are the potentials of electric vehicles for India, and highlight the salient features of PME Drive initiative, which we just discussed as of now. And as a part of your introduction, you can actually introduce by using such beautiful words. For example, if you can understand, India is having the net zero targets by 2070, and that is why we need such initiatives. So please do pause your screen, you read these particular dialogues by various eminent people and scholars, and you try to have a good amount of value additions for this answers. In the next article, we'll be talking about the recent changes that has been made to the Ayushman Bharat, right? And here this is very important article for UPSC prelims for your economic and social development, for GS2 where we have the welfare schemes for vulnerable sections of the population, and for GS3 where we have the inclusive growth and issues arising out of the same. Now when we understand, Ayushman Bharat is a very important scheme which is giving health assurance to the citizens of the nation. It provides a health cover of 5 lakh rupees per family per year, which covers secondary and tertiary care at various public and also private hospitals. The beneficiaries are identified as a criteria from the socio-economic caste census, where mostly the beneficiaries belong to the below poverty line families. The services that are covered here include surgery, medical, daycare, medicines, and even diagnostics, right? It even covers any other pre-existing diseases from the day one, right? Where any person who is having this Ayushman Bharat card issued by the government of India, they can go to any private clinic or any diagnostic center in the country, and they can avail of a cashless and paperless treatment for their particular aspect. The implementation is done at the grassroots level via the health and wellness centers at the very local level, right? And also at the hospital level, we have the both public and the private hospital in this particular aspect here. Now the recent changes has been done that all of the people in India who are the senior citizens above the age of 70 years will be covered under Ayushman Bharat. This coverage aims to benefit 4.5 crore families with 6 crore senior citizens with 5 lakh rupees free health checkup, free health insurance, right, on a family basis. Eligible senior citizens will be issued a new distinct card under Ayushman Bharat itself. So they will be having a new card, and senior citizens of the age 70 years and above, right, who are already covered under this, Ayushman Bharat, they can have an additional top-up cover of 5 lakh rupees per annum for themselves. And senior citizens of the age of say 70 years above, they can actually already avail the benefits of any other public health insurance scheme such as ESIC, say CGHS and so on, right, apart from this particular Ayushman Bharat initiative also, right. So these are all the important updations that you need to know for your prelims examination. In the next article, we'll be talking about a very important and interesting biotechnology that is known as organ-on-chip technology, right? Here, when we talk about the traditional drug development process in the nation, or the manufacturing of medicines in the country or in the worldwide, it takes researchers around 10 years to develop one medicine and cost around $2.3 billion. And also, as we understand that a medicine is developed over various stages. Firstly, there is a laboratory stage where the scientists and the biotechnologists, they try to devise the formula for the medicine. They try to then go for animal testing, after which they go for human testing, and finally, after taking the approval from the drug regulatory bodies of the concerned nations, the drug finally goes to public sale. Now, in this particular aspect, there are unethical use of animals, right? And also there are high rates of failures of various drugs. And that is why we have to understand, we have to go for another new approach. Now, there are recent advancements in human relevant 3D culture models, where these are also known as NAMs or new approach models. New approach models are highly crucial for, overcoming the challenges of the traditional drug mechanisms. Now here, we are using 3D spheroids, organoids, bioprinting and organ-on-chips, where 3D spheroid stands for spherical cells that grow in a 3D structure. So we can artificially bioengineer spherical cells in a 3D structure. We can actually try to have complex 3D structures of specific organs on computer models, and later we can actually send it for bioprinting, which is actually creating living cells and tissues layer by layer, right? That is a very painstaking task, but it will be revolutionizing the entire biotechnological aspects. While these are technologies which are not in very good functional form as of now, these are at their nascent stage, and this is why we must be trying to invest more in this particular technologies. And that is why the government has also launched a new initiative which is known as Bio E3, which is a policy for fostering high performing biomanufacturing in the nation, where we have to understand in this particular aspect, there will be more and more research and innovation and entrepreneurship in the biotechnological aspect, so that more and more startups, they can invest in this sector. They can invest in new technologies such as AI and various other machine learning platforms in biotechnological field, and they can have better amount of technology with reference to drug development, when particularly we know that India is a pharmacy capital of the entire world. And here, one of those NAMs are organ on chip technology, and this is how we understand in our computers. We have CPU, we have GPUs, we have RAMs, which are chips, right? Which are semiconductor chips. They perform such a huge amount of versatile tasks on day-to-day basis. In the same idea as a computer chip which is performing so many functions, we can have a biochip which is known as organ on chip system, that will be resembling just like a chip here. What it is containing? It is containing of various human cells in this particular structure, where these human cells, when in contact with the human blood, they can just act as say similar as a process, like the own bodily cells that we have in our own say body, right? So this is what we have to understand. These chips will be looking like this, right, where they will be assembled. For example, these are the various cells in here in this particular diagram. They will be assembled in this chip, right? And these chips will be then fitted in our body with various say instructions. For example, if this is a liver chip, right, this will be functioning the tasks of the liver. If this is a heart chip, this will be helping our hearts to perform better, right? So we understand this is the next, or say the future of biotechnology, where humans will be having some editable organs on the inside. So if you're, for example, say some of the parts of your body is not performing well, you can as easily insert a chip in your body, and hence it will be performing well. So this is a novel technology where we have to understand, in which many global startups are trying to invest in, right? If we can understand, many companies are raising 1 million euros, right? For example, say Queen Mary team has been awarded around 7 million British pounds, right? CN Bios, which are actually all of say the private biotechnological companies, right? So they are also raising $21 million. So we can understand in various parts of the countries, particularly in the Western nations, this organ for biochip is increasing, or say the prospect for the same is increasing over a period of time, because this will be revolutionizing the entire drug mechanism, or say drug testing aspect. Because for any disease, for any aspect, we can as easily as insert a chip, right? Now here, this is particularly in Indian concept. When we try to discuss it, some of the positive stress is that India amended new drugs and clinical trials rules of 2019, where the use of these NAMs has been permitted. Apart from these, 80 plus labs in the country are working on developing NAMs, and also regular workshops are also being conducted on this particular matter. But there are some challenges. Firstly, about the cost, right? The cost is very high in this particular aspect. The private sector is not enthused to say invest in this particular matter. Then in India, we have various genetic differences in the various parts of the country. That is also a factor that the biotech say scientists, they have to consider. Then the regulation is also not clear, since this is a new technology. The drug regulation is also not clear yet. Next, the private sector is also not that much excited because of the huge costs involved in this particular sector. Now finally, we'll be discussing Prelims Snippets, where we will be starting with Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. Now recently, the government of India has approved funds for the next phase of Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. Now the main objective of Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana is to have all-weather road connectivity all across the nations, and this is generally to help the various unconnected villages in the nations, unconnected remote areas, unconnected hilly regions, tribal areas in the country to be a part of the mainstream India as a part of roadway connectivity. So the key features here is to boost connectivity in habitations of around 500 people in plain regions, right, and around at 250 people in, say, tribal regions of the nations, hilly regions of the nations which are sparsely populated. The funding of the same will be distributed in the ratio of, say, center contributing 60% and the states contributing 40%. The implementation is monitored by a very efficient, say, system known as the online management monitoring and accounting system. And finally, it is also subjected to various audits over a period of time in a particular year. Now, as you all know that the winters are coming soon, and that is when the pollution in the area of Delhi NCR is also going to increase, and that is why the Delhi government and also the central government in conjunction is trying to take some steps to curb that air pollution. Firstly, we have to look at the root of the air pollution. One of the roots is the stubble burning. Stubble is a leftover of the crops, that is the crop residue, which the farmers in western UP, Haryana and Punjab set fire upon to get rid of the stubble from their farmlands. But this fire, this dust comes over Delhi and this creates a havoc. So that is what the governments are discussing to resolve this issue of stubble altogether by using biodecomposer. Biodecomposer has been developed by Indian Agriculture Research Institute to decompose stubble into manure. And what are the factors that are affecting decomposition? Firstly, temperature, moisture, the pH of the stubble and also the pH of this particular decomposer, the oxygen availability and the nature of the organic matter. Right? And in this particular aspect, 10 liters of the solution will be taking 5 days to decompose a particular stubble, right? And 25 liters takes 10 to 12 days, right? And what it is trying to do, this is trying to spray the biodecomposer on the stubble, and this will be trying to decompose and try to mix the organic matter with the soil, and hence the farmers need not light fires to the stubble. Hence a very simple solution. Recently, Government of India has launched the Mission Mausam, which is trying to aim at highly accurate and timely weather climate information in the nation. This will be implemented by the Ministry of Earth Sciences, which will be, say, further overseen by Indian Meteorological Department, Indian Institute for Tropical Meteorology, National Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasting. And this will be supported by further more organizations under Ministry of Earth Sciences itself, that is the Indian National Center for Ocean Information Services, National Center for Polar and Ocean Research, and National Institute for Ocean Technology. And here, the Government of India will be spending funds to deploy next generation radars and technologies to effectively look into the various changing weather patterns and effectively have accurate predictions for the weather scenario in the nation. It will be also deploying costly sensors, supercomputers and GIS systems to monitor the weather conditions. And finally, a part of the funds here will also be used for having better amount of research and development in the weather scenario of the country. Recently, in the areas of Mumbai, there has been an issue of land degradation and also land grabbing by land mafia with reference to the salt pans in the region. Now, salt pans are those natural or it can be even artificial land depressions where soil is extracted via evaporation. We all know the process of salt formation, right? Where the salt is left over when the water evaporates from a particular landform, such as you can see here, right? And for this, we need to know how this particular landforms such as salt pans are formed. They are formed due to geographical location, water accumulation and high evaporation rates. Firstly, geographical locations, salt pans are generally located in areas of arid or semi-arid climate because we understand that the water content is very less and the salt gets collected on the top of the soil. Next, also the closed and inland basins, particularly in areas of Kerala, right, Gujarat, we find many basins which are having a proportion of saline waters and salty waters which evaporate and leave salt behind. Also, the areas which are in close proximity to salt-rich sources, they are also having these landforms. Next, due to water accumulation in natural sources as pond, rivers and so on, there are salt pans which are forming. Also, due to artificial sources of various nature, for example, human beings, for the production of soils, they can actually have created this kind of artificial landforms and hence facilitating better evaporation rates. Also, in areas which are having high evaporation rates, particularly in the tropical regions of the world, we find that the salt pans are located. And finally, when we have to understand the process of extraction of the salt pans, this is via the salt crystallization and harvesting of the salt for economic reasons. So, that was all for today. Thank you for being a very patient audience. Please do attempt the quiz which is following up. Till the next time, all the best and best of luck. Thank you.